This is Kanzenshuu, the podcast, episode 540 for the week of August 9th, 2026. Hello again, and welcome back to Kanzenshuu, the podcast, an extension of the all-encompassing Dragon Ball fan site, Kanzenshuu. We cover anything and everything Dragon Ball in hopes of enlightening and a little bit of the entertaining. Back at you, that's me. My name is Mike. You may see me around the internets here as Vegito EX. Been around these here internets for a very long time. Hey, as you heard last time on the episode, if you haven't checked out the most recent podcast episode, I really had a good time with that. We got some real nice comments from folks, equally old people who reached out and said, hey, love hearing about the old stuff that I lived through. Yeah, there's just something about once you pass a certain period of time, I guess you just like hearing about the past. That's okay. We've been in the past, we've been in the present, we'll be in the future. Along for the ride with this here franchise we call Dragon Ball. This time here around on the podcast, it's not just me, not just Mike. We've got someone to chat with here. Vincent Haddad is the author of Next Time on Dragon Ball, Playing with a Manga and Anime Franchise. This book is out now from the University of Minnesota Press. Vincent's a great author. Vincent is a supporter of Kanzenshuu. Vincent reached out to me a couple of years ago at this point and said, hey, I'm writing this book. Love to get your input on it. As you'll hear, I got a chance to read a preview version of the book a while back, offer some input. I was just so tickled, so absolutely appreciative and tickled to be considered for, comment on this book as part of effectively the peer review process. So thank you, Vincent, here. Think about that. Full transparency here. I don't get anything by selling you a copy of this book, but you should just know, my name's going to pop up in here a whole heck of a lot. That's going to be the topic for this here episode. We're going to get to that interview with Vincent momentarily. Before we truly get in there, though, I kind of want to read just the opening page-ish to give you a little bit of a taste of what this book is about and what we're setting the stage here for. Vincent's introduction goes, Akira Toriyama's Dragon Ball is an essential piece of cultural and media history to advance a substantial understanding of how franchises develop story worlds and storytelling forms that can cohere, deform, reform, and repeat over and over across multiple forms of media, most notably its manga and anime. The franchise is among the most fascinating, influential, and significant global franchises in the last 40 years. A reality felt beyond the objective status it holds as one of the best-selling manga of all time, among the most lucrative merchandising franchises of all time, and its anime adaptation arguably the most directly responsible for the form's global demand and popularity today. Yet the series has been largely discounted in the wealth of recent scholarship on manga and anime, which tend to center on other significant series such as Astro Boy, Neon Genesis Evangelion, Macross, Mobile Suit Gundam Wing, Cowboy Bebop, Naruto, and the works of Hayao Miyazaki and their cultural and formal histories. This is not a critique of scholarship in manga and anime studies, but is rather indicative of the diegetic form of Dragon Ball itself, so formulaic that it almost repels critical attention. This fact makes Dragon Ball far better suited as a piece in a broader study of franchise aesthetics wherein we endeavor to think through how a repetitive, long-form narrative structure remains compelling across hundreds of hours of transmedia for millions of diverse fans across the globe. Vincent Haddad is an associate professor of English at Central State University. He is author of The Detroit Genre, Race, Dispossession, and Resilience in American Literature and Film, 1967 to 2023. And most relevant to our discussion today, the new book, Next Time on Dragon Ball, Playing with a Manga and Anime Franchise, out now from University of Minnesota Press. Vincent, thanks so much for joining me here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Vincent, I am psyched to chat with you. We've been trading emails and chats for what feels like years at this point. Maybe it's coming up on years, which is so funny to me here. We're going to talk about the new book that you have out now, bunch of cool little tidbits and selections from it and ideas and concepts and all that. But before we even get into the book, I have to ask, it's the basic question that everyone always gets asked. Tell me your origin story. How did you get into Dragon Ball?
Oh, man. Well, I think like a lot of people, I got into it watching Cartoon Network. Yeah, I know it was circulating a bit before that time, but that was how I got into it. It was so unlike basically anything that was on TV at the time. I mean, I reflect back on, like Thundercats being on at the time, and then maybe a little after at Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo. But the only show I ever really needed to make sure I wasn't doing homework and I was tuning in was Dragon Ball. If I wanted to be able to talk about it with friends at school the next day, or suffer through the reset back to Raditz
Yep,
right
yep.
before the Frieza battle. But yeah, I mean, it was just the probably the most important franchise to me as a young person. And so when I saw kind of circulating around this call for this new book series called Mass Markets, which aims to understand kind of broadly how franchises work and how their story worlds function narratively, commercially, given how franchise aesthetics have come to define global culture in the 20th and 21st century. I was talking to the editor and I was like, I mean, you realize Dragon Ball is the best. And then I kind of felt like I needed to justify that for the next 2, 3 years when I was writing it, and really try to understand why it why it was that I thought it was so unique, and yet like what it could tell us about franchise aesthetics kind of more broadly.
Yeah. And we're going to get into the concept of play and mimetic actions and everything that you get into here. Something I haven't really talked a whole lot about with folks before. I think this is a great place to kind of start that discussion. As you know, and other folks know, I came in a little bit before this. I came in during the
Hmm.
syndication broadcast era. I was a little older than a lot of folks who came in during the Toonami generation. And what I recognize as being an important part of Dragon Ball taking off further, again, I always talk about how syndication was a success. That's the reason why Cartoon Network wanted it. But the after school time block was so important for really
Yeah.
breaking through. And it was a different era. It was really appointment viewing back then for kids of that audience, especially because you talk about being a father yourself now in the book. As you've grown and seen kids television change in the streaming era. Before we even get into anything else, can you maybe reflect a little bit on that, like the appointment viewing for yourself as a kid versus what you see with your own children today?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, I think the only thing I can compare it to at the time, in terms of the passion, and kind of the importance of the conversation at school after the fact was professional wrestling to me,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
WWE Attitude Era, WCW, where that was also kind of a long running story that happened over the course of weeks and years. And if you missed it, you kind of missed it. And I think like with my kids, my oldest son is 6. He's already very like well fluent with like how to get the PlayStation controller to get to the Netflix
yep, yep.
and the Crunchyroll app. And like I have them in terms of anime, I have them watching Haikyuu, which is another one of my favorite anime. And that's kind of the substitute of like the long running kind of show, because everything else, like Octonauts and the other things that they're
Yeah,
watching,
yeah.
are kind of one off episodes. But yeah, I mean, it's completely different because it's really just like they're asking like, oh, can we watch a show now? And then I could just put on exactly what it is they want to watch, or now he can put on exactly what he wants to watch. Yeah, I mean, even asking that question, I think gets to one of the questions I kind of tackle in the book, which is and franchises. So much of it is like it comes from the parents of the kids, right? Like when we give our kids toys or we direct them to this or that show, the parent is kind of passing down a sort of we have like a reason why we're excited to share with them something. Maybe it's like some kind of forms of social reproduction where there's lessons in them or themes or things that we believe, like with Haiku and being about teamwork and working together, and not giving up. But for the kids themselves, they will may take some of that, but they may choose to do all sorts of different things with it. Um, I mean, my son was literally just with the theme song of Haikyuu was just on And he's changing all the words to be very like potty words, like very silly potty words,
Sure, yeah.
which with Dragon Ball is like right up that alley. But I think it's super different because it's just them self-selecting, and then they're not going to miss anything if they don't want to.
Yeah.
But it also has a downside of like we were really paying attention. Like they may, as he gets older, he may not be feeling the need to pay as much attention to particular details because you can just rewind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And we're going to loop back around to that. There's a lot of stuff to get into there. Have I asked you this? How did you find Kanzenshuu?
Oh man, so the Kanzenshuu, you don't even realize like how important it was to me when I was working on this book. I got to start working on this book on a sabbatical. So sabbatical is kind of like at some stage of being a professor, you can kind of pitch a research project and take a semester where I work a semester off and start doing the research on that project. And so for me, like during my work days, reading anime and manga scholarship and manga histories, like I come from writing mostly about American comics. So this was Dragon Ball is super important to me, but anime and manga history, I really needed to kind of do a lot of research to learn about. And then of course I was rereading the manga, rewatching the show. But every day on my drive to work and when I was walking my dog, I started with the very first episode of Kanzenshuu.
Oh my gosh.
And I listened. I think I made it through like 150 episodes, and then I started skipping ahead to like maybe the most recent 75 episodes or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was such like a time capsule, the podcast, because like we're not far off on an age. So like, the way you and Julian and Mary were talking was like so familiar to me. It was really, really interesting. I mean, I even remember like I hit like up the point in the podcast, like you guys got engaged or married, and I was like, oh my gosh. This is like 2000, whatever. It was just this incredible time capsule. So the podcast was like huge for me, just in terms of like orienting myself in time with the fan conversations, because I was really trying to historicize different moments. Like I think that podcast really got me interested in just the idea that this manga that was written in 1984 and then on for like a decade, and then starting to pick up in the US, there's this time dilation, and I got really interested in that just listening to your podcast, because here I was thinking about different conversations, and so like for example, one of the topics that you guys were very focused on in those early episodes was the Orange Brick
Oh boy.
DVDs.
Yep. Sure.
And that was as soon as it was off Cartoon Network, like, and whenever those came out, that's how I rewatched the show when I was in college, I think. And I wasn't necessarily as online in forums and stuff to even realize that there was like backlash to those DVDs.
Yeah.
But then listening to that, like, and I was kind of like counting down the time until I would get to like, I was excited to hear what you guys were going to think about the live action movie. I mean, it was just such a trip
Yeah.
to listen to that. But then like, because of how engaged I was with those early episodes of the podcast, I obviously had like more targeted topics that I was looking for when I was doing research myself.
Sure.
And the forums, when I was looking for things like about fan fiction or about Piccolo or things like that, it was this incredible historical archive. It gave windows into different times, how those conversations kind of evolve and change, and not really change like progressively in terms of like, I became kind of attuned to, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, like these conversations, like there's obviously a lot of like social and cultural things happening outside of Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
But I don't think like there's just natural progress in these kinds of conversations. I really became aware of how much work you guys were doing in like moderating
Yeah.
those forums. And you can really like as you look forward, there's this shaping that goes on with that. So I got really interested in the forums, and then the last thing I would say about Kanzenshuu is so the other books in the series that have come out before mine, there's two. There's one about Star Trek. Star Trek is this franchise that has been extremely popular among academics to write about. So there's a lot of academic scholarship about Star Trek that Adam Kotsko, the author of that book, had to work with, but also had to, something to respond to, some conversation to like push it forward in some sense. Um, there's very, very little academic scholarship on Dragon Ball. There's some, but very little, and the best of it is really about Latin America, which makes its way into this book. And so I was really the rumor guides. I was reading that as academic scholarship. I mean, like the close reading that you are doing, the kind of historical organization you were doing. Obviously, one of my favorite ones was if Goku and is it true that Goku and Chi-Chi had never really kissed?
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like, I mean, every part of it was super helpful. And then obviously, just having something reliable where I could look up quickly the animation guide and the flow of anime production was super helpful, because sometimes I would go to the fandom website and it was just like I couldn't the fandom wiki.
You can't track a source.
You can't track it.
This is what I've been saying is like you go down and it says Kanzenshuu 7, like cool dude, thanks.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean I wouldn't have been able to do this book without Kanzenshuu. It also kind of gave me a sigh of relief, because like between Kanzenshuu and like Derek Padula's books about the series, I wasn't going to be writing a history of the franchise. That wasn't the purpose of the book series.
Sure, yeah.
It's not my training to even really do that. I'm more of a cultural studies writer. But it's so valuable. I don't know that other franchises, even Star Trek, have fans that did something like that. It's so reliable and helpful for me to be able to pick up and then develop a cultural studies argument about, and hopefully other people will pick up what I do and make other different arguments about it, because that's kind of how academic scholarship works. But the Kanzenshuu was huge. The podcast was where I started, and it was really, really influential.
Yeah, I'm really appreciative for that, and it backs up everything that I do and want to do and why I do it, which is nice to hear. I do want to get to the subject of the book, which is play, but something you touched on there. This is an academic book, an academic writing style, and I'm of a couple different minds. And I've been looking for the right way to say this, because like the way that I read academic books like this is I almost can't deal with the constant, as blank says it, it echoes blank's remarks. And I learned how to write like this in college, and it drove me nuts, because I'm always like, I don't care about what they said. I care about what you have to say. I want to know what your argument is in this. And so I feel like I kind of need to set the stage for people buying this book, that like that's by design here. So before we get to the topic of play, can you just break down for folks that maybe haven't read something like this? Like, it's not a narrative.
No, it's an academic argument, and the way academic arguments work is, I guess the structure would be like they say, I say, right? Like you orient the book in some sense with current conversations, and then you're adding that conversation, you're moving the conversation forward in some sense. And so like citation is really important, demonstrating gaps in a conversation, or the value of what I'm adding to the conversation and talking about Dragon Ball is kind of part of the game there that you do. Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the funny comments, I always get this comment, which in academia, it's like I'm always interpreting it like, what exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, sure.
Which is when people read my work, these things kind of go out for peer review. I don't know who's reviewing it, and it comes back. And people always put like that I write very accessibly, like for a wider audience, which in academia can also mean like I'm not like not using enough jargon as like a they mean as a negative or a positive. Like I never really know for sure.
That's so funny. Yeah.
but yeah, when I was writing this, I had to be thinking about I was thinking about fans reading it. The acquiring editor of the book, he told me there's going to be two groups of people that read this. There's going to be people who love Dragon Ball, and there's going to be people who have never seen one episode of Dragon Ball, but they're interested in the idea.
Right.
There's not going to be people in the middle. And so I was really trying, and that was a hard. It was hard to thread that needle sometimes because I think for some fans they would be aware of a lot of the references and conversations about the franchise in there, and then I'm thinking about the different value adds that I have with fans, and then as well as academic audiences who I have to explain like what Dragon Ball is and like how it works.
Yeah.
Or like I have to like situate a certain narrative arc and things like that. So yeah. So I mean it was a joy to do and write in that way. But yeah, there is some of that kind of quotation and things that I think is like also pretty helpful because I mean there's some really great manga historians out there that are also super helpful in this. Like Exner was very helpful with working on this.
I just think it's funny. Like you're not the first person to tell me like whether it's going through the rumor guide or some of the other guys at the site, like, oh yeah, this should hold up to academia standards. I'm like,
yeah.
That's cool to hear. Also, oh no, I wrote academia style. I don't want to. Like I want to write for, different. All right. Anyway, let's get into the book. Play, the concept of play. The title of the book is Next Time on Dragon Ball: Playing with a Manga and Anime Franchise. Really high level here, Vincent. Like, what do you mean by play?
So the charge of the series, I think it's important to contextualize again to underscore. It's like, how does Dragon Ball work as a franchise, right? And so while I was kind of rereading the manga and rewatching anime, one of the first things I kind of noticed was like how much the characters within the franchise discuss and talk about play and playtime. Like when a villain would come in, sometimes to like let you know that he was serious, he would be like playtime is over. Like they talk about play all the time. Like I think in the introduction I talk about with a villain like Boo, it was like that he didn't understand play, right? Like he played too much.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And so as I was trying to exactly kind of understand and come up with a framework for thinking about the franchise as a whole, I really came to the conclusion that the best way to understand it was thinking about the franchise as a toy. And this is following Walter Benjamin's understanding of toys and playing with toys. And I'll kind of walk through why that is. This kind of description, like he was writing about toys in like the the 1920s, 1930s, and it's like the way he describes toys. On the one hand, is like a perfect description of how Dragon Ball works, and at the same time, a perfect way to describe how fans have engaged with Dragon Ball. And it was also kind of interesting to me to kind of assert this about a franchise, which to me, its toys are like insufficient or unsatisfying in comparison to the way that reading the manga or watching the show kind of provoke you to want to play, right?
Yeah.
So there were really two parallel reasons to think about this franchise as a toy. The first was historical, and then the second was theoretical. So when Dragon Ball was released in Japan in the 1980s, it was really interesting to learn about how children's programming on television was a subject of a lot of like political debate. especially as new markets were emerging for large audiences. Like in China, there were a lot more households that were getting televisions at the time. In South America, the same thing. In places like the US, Ronald Reagan's FCC deregulated children's programming so that to allow for like more commercialization, and you could like target these things. So historically, like this franchise kind of comes out of a moment when in the US you would see toy companies use things like GI Joe and Transformers. Like the cartoons themselves, the story worlds themselves were entirely oriented around selling toys to kids. And that GI Joe and Transformers were both produced by Toei Animation because Japan was kind of better situated to pump out these cheaply made cartoons more quickly. So it's like in the background of these companies thinking about their own properties like Dragon Ball. So you can like in Dragon Ball you can see the impulses of those commercial pressures. You know, GI Joe, Transformers, those were able to kind of travel globally faster than Dragon Ball. And yet like Dragon Ball doesn't have a toy that's like teaching you how to use it, right? Like Toriyama was most interested in video games. There's like 100 Dragon Ball video games now. But even there, like the idea, like you have so many different styles of video games that come out of that. Platformers, side scrollers, or RPGs, obviously the straight fighting games. It kind of gives a sense that like there is no one-to-one kind of translation for exactly the kind of way that Dragon Ball works, which to me, of course, like when I think about my kids, it's like posing your body, screaming, and like punching your brother or punching your dad, right?
Yeah.
It's very physical, it's very social. And so that's where I needed this kind of theoretical way in. And so that's where Walter Benjamin, who's this German cultural critic, he had this really helpful way of thinking about toys and play. For him, the great law that presides over play is repetition. So again, thinking about the way franchises reproduce themselves, like Dragon Ball has this very cyclical, formulaic, and repetitive way it tells its stories. And then he has this description, and I'll just read it. I felt like when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, he could be writing about Dragon Ball. So he writes that, quote, "We know that for a child, repetition is the soul of play, that nothing gives him greater pleasure than to do it again, except that the child is not satisfied with twice, but wants the same thing again and again, 100 or even 1,000 times. This is not only the way to master frightening fundamental experiences by deadening one's own response, by arbitrarily conjuring up experiences, or through parody. It also means enjoying one's victories and triumphs over and over again with total intensity." So I felt like this is a great way to describe how Dragon Ball works. Like on the one hand, Toriyama has this parody style. He's bringing in all these genres. He doesn't necessarily like even take his own franchise super seriously, which is part of the fun. I mean, we know he does, but like it's kind of like there's always a tongue-in-cheek kind of comedic nature to it. And yet there's this seriousness to how it treats the soul of play. There's this full and earnest commitment to that framing of a total intensity. Like that's where his like iconic artwork, those like lines of movement, the onomatopoeia, makes me think of, as well as someone in the anime, like the violent animation sequences, the screaming of the voice actors. There's just this sincerity to both sides of the comedy and catastrophe of the franchise. So Benjamin then he takes this understanding of play and he applies it to toys. So for him, toys serve as these markers of like material history and sociocultural context of play. He describes toys as a site of conflict between adults and children, right? So that's what I kind of mentioned earlier. Like I think about this often when I'm taking my kids to do something. This is maybe just like the way parents talk nowadays, but like I take my kids to do something, or I might buy them a toy. I'm always like thinking about I think the buzzword is like enrichment. Like how is this enriching my child? Like what are they learning from this?
Yeah.
For Benjamin, like this is how one generation understands toys when they pass them along to these kids, right? It's a way of passing along social parameters, rules, directions, values, and all these things. And the magic for Benjamin is these moments of what he calls wayward repetition. And this is a word I use in the book a lot. And that is when all the intended uses of the toy might be dismissed or manipulated in unforeseen ways by the child. I like catch myself watching my kids, and and sometimes I'll say like that's not how you're supposed to play with that. Um,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then I'm like, man, I just wrote a whole friggin' book about Goku, and like, why am I saying that? But you catch yourself doing that, and I mean, just two things related to Dragon Ball with that is like the story itself draws your attention to those moments all the time. I mean, Goku, he will not, like, despite Chi-Chi's best efforts, like he will not get a job. The ways in which he is playing, which is training, like it is work, but it's not productive, right? Like he's not fitting into that productive way of understanding the kind of like the playful world he's in. Not sure if he and Piccolo successfully get their driver's license. I don't think they successfully get their driver's license. But when I think about the franchise, like kind of broadly, right? Of course, a franchise or a toy, they provide social structures that can be quite rigid, like in how we orient ourselves to other people, how we think about things like gender, sexuality, and race. But at the same time, a franchise toy in this case can be manipulated in unforeseen ways, right? And so I've really became invested in what did fans do with this franchise, especially as it traveled, to take it places that you couldn't foresee in 1985. What kinds of challenges did the franchise face? But then, like, really taken in different directions than I could have anticipated in relation to, for example, race, right? With the
Yeah.
Piccolo is Black conversation, or with fan fiction.
I gotta say, I love that section, and what I had. Maybe you can tell me how you frame it in the book, because as someone who wrote it, you'd have a better way of explaining it. But in light of that, and we all have seen and accepted that, and that's just like a normal conversation. And I love the way you phrase it. It's like, even in spite of what we see earlier in the series with the character literally named Black, compared to how we get to Piccolo later. Like, God, because that's the thing, is like, you've hinted to it here. It's not, we're not just talking about toys, and you even give a citation to Mary and the feature films and like that style of play here. And sure, we talk about fan conversations, and you mentioned forums and all that, but like, yeah, you really get into sexuality and race and identity in here in a way that I feel like we've only been able to have casual conversations about. And so it's really exciting for me to sit and read something written this way and like inadvertently be part of the conversation along the way too. Like, as sections of my forum are cited, it's wild to me to read it in this kind of context. So yeah, skip me ahead here to really chapters 5 and 6, and of course Popo. We didn't mention Mr. Popo here. The racial politics of anachronism.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, like it takes me kind of 2 chapters to develop an arc on race. The first is to kind of think through how and why Black people are being represented the way that they are in the show. So the example that I mostly focus on is Commander Black, or Staff Officer Black. And there, most listeners are going to be familiar with the way that he's drawn, the way that he's portrayed. The reason for using the framework of anachronism was really helpful to me because, so as most of your listeners probably know, that style of drawing comes from American visual culture from the Jim Crow period. And that was a period when a lot of American newspaper comics were being translated and published in Japanese newspapers. A lot of early American animation was being produced in the or shown in Japan. But also, so this again is being drawn and then animated in the 80s and in Japan. That style of drawing kind of like after some controversy outside of Dragon Ball, it does go out of style in Japan itself, but it's a franchise, right? So franchises reproduce themselves over and over and over again. So
Mm-hmm.
you get these instances when Commander Black or Mr. Popo get censored or changed, but then like bounce back, right? There's an elasticity to it. So even like in Dragon Ball Superhero, which is one of the more recent artifacts from this franchise, you get like now a CG, like a digitally animated version of the original Commander Black. So there's no way of escaping it,
Mm-hmm.
or like it always bounces back. And then for me in that chapter is really interesting, like to think about this relic of American visual culture being filtered and bounced back in the late 1990s back onto American television in a way that's surprising or shocking, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so the person that I really ended up being interested in focusing on was, I kind of make my own suggestion that an inspiration for that character, because that whole arc is based around the Bruce Lee film Game of Death. That like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's performance in that film, in some ways, is getting reproduced,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And but in a way that's like the way that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, like his what he meant, what Bruce Lee meant to him, what martial arts meant to African American communities in the 70s. There's like this, all this kind of interesting cross cultural exchange that was happening. His deadpan kind of performance in a lot of his appearances in film. Um, it then gets, we see it through this kind of cartoonish villain, and or we are fed it back to us with this kind of cartoonish performance of Commander Black, in a way that's like not even recognizable as an inspiration. And so I then kind of think about, I'm not sure if people are familiar with those scenes of Game of Death with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, he's like 7'5" and is very domineering over Bruce Lee, like physically imposing. He has like this long kick where you see his like long leg, um, keeping Bruce Lee at distance. It allows me to kind of transition, as I do in the next chapter, to the chapter about Piccolo's alienation from the other characters in the Dragon Ball universe, and then the fan interpretation that Piccolo is black,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And this has had a lot of conversation and discourse, positive and negative. I think Dexter Thomas does a fantastic job of developing an argument around the Piccolo is black in terms of what's gained and what's lost by thinking about Piccolo as black. He kind of situates it as like in the 90s there were all of these black sidekick characters in like American sitcoms. They all kind of share these certain qualities. They would often like perform domestic labor for free, which is what Piccolo does for Goku. They have like a tough exterior, but they're also like sexually non-threatening. Piccolo fits with this racial lens that Americans bring to a lot of media.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say the one other quality, I don't know if you just mentioned it, but spinning through my head, as an avid Stephen King reader, the magical qualities of the black characters that show up. It's like,
yes.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yeah. He's closer to nature. Like all of these things, we see it with black superhero characters,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like, they all have electricity superpowers and things like that. And some of the downsides of that is like when we impose an American worldview, like
Yeah.
according to Dr. Thomas, like we'll lose like all of the Chinese influences in these characters and
Sure.
the spirit and the kind of spiritual dimension, right? So on the one hand, Piccolo does create this opening for black fans to belong and see themselves in the story world and play with the story world, because characters like Commander Black are not really a way in. On the other hand, there's this kind of narrowing of interpretive possibilities when we kind of center America and American concerns when we watch media. So yeah, I just kind of then I just treat I just actually just read Piccolo as black and kind of see where that takes me. And I've kind of found that to be a really fun and interesting chapter to write, was just to see him as a black character, what I got attuned to is like the way localizers and translators, they were cueing in a lot of that language, changing lines that Piccolo had. And this was before, fans were like asserting that Piccolo is black, but just, giving him speeches where he's changing lines where in reality, he's just like saying like, I like to fight. And then it's like, instead the line will be something about like, don't judge me by the color of my skin kind of language.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, you see all of these kind of ways that beyond fans, that gets kind of inputted. And of course, that gave me an opportunity to talk about one of my favorite fan productions related to anime more broadly, but Dragon Ball in particular, which was RDC World's Anime House, where it's just like all these anime characters living in the house together, kind of like Real World. RDC World is this African American group of YouTubers, and it's just so funny. And I just wanted to spend time thinking about like, about it, and also like rather than just Piccolo being black, like thinking about all of these characters as black, and just like what that kind of means, right? I have a similar experience with like earlier in the book with like there's this Colombian parade, this parade of girls dressed as signs. It's just fun to kind of see like, well, what if like we just cross-play
Mm-hmm.
all of the characters, right? And it's just kind of fun to do that. So yeah, if people haven't watched Anime House, I recommend it. It's very funny.
Yeah. So if it's not clear, like the play that you talk about does extend to, like we've already mentioned, yes, toys and video games and those kind of things, but YouTube series, you've mentioned Abridged on plenty of occasions throughout here. The other anime series you just mentioned, there's so much that you talk about, and it's just this like the modern day. You mentioned, fanfic and AMVs, like all of this stuff gets in there. The way that I always described things like AMVs, and even working on my website in the earliest days, and this gives me a chance to reflect on that, was like, well, I didn't make the show. I can't make the show. I can't, go over there and make Dragon Ball GT 2. Okay, so what can I do? Well, I could talk about it. I could document these various things. I could take this music and this video that do not go together and find a way to put them together. And that editing is my contribution to something societal, about this franchise. And when you're younger, at least for me, when I'm doing this stuff, I don't think about it on any scale larger than, oh, this is fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when you watch something like Anime House or like Mary's feature films, like those stills I went back to, I think that is one of the things I'm kind of asserting in that Piccolo is black. It's like what's there is that they're just having fun with the franchise. Everything that they're doing with it is a wayward repetition born out of the franchise itself. Like it's all in the story world. That's why I kind of rarely understand a lot of like backlash to some of those kinds of like fan responses or fan creations, because it's in the story. I think was it Mary who had she would have these Trunks lines, right? And it was like Trunks is like a naughty boy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it was his own line. Like it's all there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
In the frame, like a lot of it's not even like subtext. It's like
Yeah, it is the text.
It's the text itself, and so.
I also think it's something like the reenactment of the Cell games at the Tenkaichi Budokai. Like the series plays with itself in those ways too. Like smashing action figures together is in the show. Man, there's so much I want to get into, and I kind of just wanted to highlight a couple selections that really spoke to me on a personal level here. This is really early in the book. I think this must be chapter 1. It's page 24 here. I'm just going to read a quick selection here. Naysayers of Dragon Ball often unwittingly echo the words of Chala Head Chala when they dismissively assert that nothing ever happens in the show, by which they mean that if they tune in at any given moment, they're likely to see a character glaring at an opponent or screaming for minutes on end. Like, could you sum up Dragon Ball fandom and detractors any more succinctly than that right there? Is you talk about Head-Chala and Het-Chara and the meaning and the emptiness of the mind and everything there. And I loved that section there. And that's kind of like your intro for the whole book.
Yeah, no, but my opening chapter, I really ground the interpretation of the franchise through Chala Het-Chala. For people that don't know, the writer of the song explains the translation as it's okay to pretend nothing happened. I kind of really got taken with that word pretend like nothing happened, because for any of us, and the people in the Kanzenshuu community, it's not that nothing happens, right?
Yeah.
But that it's okay to pretend like nothing happens. Like, we know that this show affects us. It affects us physically. Like we want to, get in the pose and scream. But there is something that's kind of like freeing about sitting down with something, just kind of sincerely and genuinely tells you that it's okay to pretend like nothing happened, right? And it can be self-reflexive, can play with itself in that way. Like, this kind of goes back to the very first thing that you talked about in terms of academic writing. When I started this project, I started it from a defensive mindset. Like, why? Like, but very few academics have touched this franchise, even though there's a lot of anime and manga scholarship out there. And I came from it like kind of defensively, like Dragon Ball is the best.
Yeah,
like,
it's so good. Why wouldn't you write about it?
It's so good. And you would say like, well, nothing happens. It's like, well, that's why it's very well suited for a series that's trying to understand how franchises work, I think, because that's what makes it so compelling to me, is that it can be so successful and reproduce itself over now 40 years. And yeah, fundamentally the structure of a story is like nothing happens because the world can get destroyed, they can wish it back, but everything matters still. It matters to us. And I can watch and get hyped up when Goku's going to do his like 20th different transformation, maybe not as much as when he first turned Super Saiyan, but
pretty close.
Pretty close. like when Ultra Instinct was like incredible. Like, and that's what my buy-in really became, was like to just try to understand how does it still hit with that intensity and matter in that way. Chala Het-Chala, I think, nails it in terms of just how absurd all the lyrics are, but understanding that like you're pretending that nothing happens, like stuff is happening.
Another quote that stuck out to me, this is also fairly early on in the book, and I felt like you were writing this and you like turned to the camera and said, Mike, this one's for you. And this is, I'm going to paraphrase it just a little bit here. You say, where endless fan debates are often settled through authoritative references to Toriyama's manga, even the most expert analysis among fans often find joy in the impossibility of establishing definitive answers, with fracture and inconsistencies within the so-called definitive text and multiplied by its various outside manifestations, the anime, video games, authoritative guidebooks, and so on. Like, that is my life right there.
Yeah, I think that probably was about you. It's like the "You're So Vain" song. You probably think this is about you, but I think that was from because when I was thinking about this early on. But that podcast was your podcast was fun from the beginning. When you first started asking what my origin story was, I had this like moment of panic that I realized I remembered that in those early episodes, you would ask guests. What their favorite Bulma haircut was. And I like had this moment of panic that I hadn't reflected or thought about my favorite Bulma.
And of course, I have no recollection of that whatsoever. Because
really?
Yeah. Because I mean, I've been doing this a very long time, and so there was a point early on and extensively into the show where I would remember everything about every single show, because of course I record it, but I also edit and produce and distribute every single show myself. It's a one-man production in that regard. But eventually there does come a point where like, did I say that 20 years ago? I guess so, because there it is right there.
Yeah, this is your time capsule.
Yeah.
But that's true of like so many shows like I think Carthu's Dojo on YouTube, he does like these what ifs, right? I mean, there's a lot of pleasure in that, like those debates and thinking things through and then spiraling them out. Yeah, I mean that's the pleasure of a knowledge culture.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball has a very passionate knowledge culture. I think my if I get like less than 10 actuallys, but with this book, I hit my mark because
yeah.
yeah, I mean,
and then the nice thing is that I already gave you several of these. So.
You did. Yeah,
In the interest of full transparency, I did have a chance to read a draft of this book in late 2024, and I gave you some suggestions and corrections and those kinds of things. And even as I'm rereading it now, I'm like, oh shit, did I see this before? Should I have mentioned this? What if I also could have added it? Like, whatever. It is what it is. But
yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah. My question there is, so I last read a draft in late 2024. Here we are in mid 2026. What changed with the book since your earliest drafts, but also since that was like a complete form of a book at that point? What's changed since then? I mean, Daima.
Yeah, so it went out for peer review. I also got to talk to and have a manga historian read it. So I think actually some of the stuff that maybe you hadn't seen was there's a lot more like Japanese language assistance that I was able to get.
Mm-hmm.
And then also like I learned a lot more about Fuji TV and like the time in which it aired. And that's all like assistance from other people. So yeah, I mean, I think over that time it did evolve and improve, hopefully improve quite a bit. Yeah, and then when it came back to me, so how academic scholarship work is it goes out for peer review, and then I have like 6 months to make additional changes. So that's like a whole nother year of working on it. Things that I wrote originally, like I'm like, Toriyama's said like he really tried hard and like he really tried in Daima or whatever. But then like in that intervening time period, like Daima came out.
Yeah.
So like I got a chance to kind of think about Daima and put that into the coda about aging, especially the first couple episodes, because I think it was still airing even after I finished. But yeah, so Daima came out. Now they're gonna do a cut of Super. That sounds exciting. The two things that I would say that resonate with me about what's changed is that last week or this past weekend, not to date this podcast too much, but this would be the end of July 2026. Akira Toriyama was just inducted into the Eisner Hall of Fame. The Eisners are a comics event. I've been voting for those awards for a long time. And one of the things that I realized early on in this project, because the first thing I did was I read all the manga, which in some cases was rereading the manga. I had rereading Dragon Ball Z, but reading Super for the first time, as opposed to watching it, and some of even the older stories. And being someone that writes about comics, mostly American comics, in comics studies, we often talk about like the most influential, comics artists, Jack Kirby and Stan Lee. I mean, we go a bit beyond that. And I started saying to people like Akira Toriyama, like I had this epiphany early on. It was like, he is one of the best comics artists. I like the way you would say it is like he's one of the most significant figures in comics history. But I think that can get confused with thinking about like his impact or commercial success, like impact in the sense like,
sure.
Obviously a lot of people have copied his style and drawing characters, but like just on the merits of his graphic storytelling, I had this like realization of just like how incredible of an artist he was and a graphic storyteller he was. So like, even on the criteria that I was I would have evaluated any of these other comics, American comics that I write about. That was just like probably my first takeaway. That was like in the first like month. I was like, I don't think like outside of Dragon Ball fandom, I don't know if people realize like, that him being inducted in that Hall of Fame, that is like way overdue. That's like 10 years overdue for someone like for just like what an incredible artist he was. And I mean, I also just kind of gained an immediate appreciation for like a preference or affinity for the manga. Like I said, my origin story was watching it on Cartoon Network. I think that's a joke about most Dragon Ball fans is they don't read, right?
Yeah.
um, and that was for the most part that was me. I mean, I was just a fan of the show, but the manga is so good. I mean, it's better. It's just on its face, it's a lot better. So yeah, I mean, I think that he just got inducted into the Hall of Fame is way overdue because like those naysayers you referenced in your previous question. I mean, I just think people don't realize what an incredible graphic storyteller he is.
I feel like I could go on forever and pick your brain on so much, but we've already been going for a while here, and I don't want to take all of your time. So I guess where I'll leave it is just say the book is Next Time on Dragon Ball, Playing with the Manga and Anime Franchise. This is for the Mass Markets Story Worlds Across Media series. The author is Vincent Haddad. You are here with me chatting about the book. I am so appreciative for the opportunity to read it ahead of time and to provide some feedback. And I know most of my feedback was like, hey, you spelled this name wrong. That's just Mike. But I hope you could find some value in some of the other stuff in there. And I certainly noticed it along the way. It is a trip to read through a book and be like, oh, that's me cited. Oh, that's me cited. Oh, that's me cited. I don't know what else to say other than it's a trip, and I'm so appreciative. And it's kind of like the culmination of everything I've wanted Kanzenshuu to be, and to see it reflected back at me this way is perfect. Like, I want to be the source for just like, hey, come read everything there is to know about this franchise and this author, and ask me questions. The episode of the podcast that just came out today as we're recording, and so it's the most recent episode, most likely, was spawned by someone sending an email and just asking me a question about the old days. Like, nothing makes my day more than someone being inquisitive about this franchise and its history. And so to see it explored in this way and then go off in all these other directions, have all these tentacles of discussions and theories and arguments, like, I love it. So I'm so appreciative for you reaching out, for you putting this book together. People want to pick up the book. They have some options. Where can they go?
Well, they could go to the University of Minnesota Press website to get it directly, or bookshop.org to support their local bookseller. They can get it from Amazon. It should be in a lot of places that they could find. But probably buying it online is the more reliable than walking into the store.
Vincent, anything else you want to send people off with as they wrap up the discussion here and go to pick up the book that is their next action?
Yeah, I think when you think about your fandom, it's okay to not be cynical. I think that was one of my big takeaways by the end was Dragon Ball still circulates in a lot of discourses that I don't like, and when I was like, I get 3 years of my life to think about this franchise and write about this franchise.
Yeah.
I ended up just focusing and thinking about the wayward repetitions that I really liked, and I hope other people like these kind of fan interventions as well. But yeah, I mean, I kind of shed a lot of. I don't feel defensive about writing an academic book about Dragon Ball. I think it's amazing. And it's the best. Dragon Ball's the best. I feel like I defended that argument that I made 3 years ago to the editor that Dragon Ball's the best. I think I defended it.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You won the argument. Yeah, if that's your final argument, you won. You got it.
Yeah, exactly.
Vincent, thanks so much. I'm so appreciative. It's a great read. I encourage everyone to check it out.
Very appreciative to you as well.
Thank you once again to Vincent for basically everything. Just again, a really, really great read. It is something to not only be able to do what I love doing, which is to offer up my expertise, my knowledge, my history, my experiences as answers, and to help put some understanding and contextual history into place here. I love all that. It's also totally wild to not just be a citation, but also be part of that history that is then being put into context with the larger franchise and fandom understanding. Very strange, very, very cool, a very unique experience for me. I think folks that have been around for a long time and have been regular listeners, readers, visitors of Kanzenshuu, and of course Daizenshu X before it, are going to get a lot out of this book. So thank you, Vincent. It was a great read. Again, the book is out now from University of Minnesota Press. Says it's up for pre-order as I'm recording this. I pre-ordered it months ago. They sent it to me a month ago. I've had it in my hands. They will probably just mail it to you if you order it directly from them. So that said, oh boy, I guess www.kanzenshuu.com. That is kanzenshuu.com. What do we got going on? It has been a kind of a rotation of from the past Friday and weekend wiki wrap-up articles on the site. That's where I've been pouring a lot of my personal attention and work. For those who don't follow along, you gotta go to the website. There's a website too. That is our own internal meme. It remains true. We know these two things to be true. Dragon Ball fans don't read, and Kanzenshuu fans don't know that there's a website. There is, in fact, a website. Go read it. From the past Friday is an article series I started. What did we decide, like 13 years ago, 15 years ago, something like that? I had 3 entries just sharing cool audio files from the past. There was one I was missing. I dug that up, and I've continued the series over the last month, 2 months, beyond that, just pulling cool things from the past. I think, is it the most recent one, or maybe it's 2 ago, was my handwritten notes for the very first podcast episode of ours back in 2005. I still have that legal pad kicking around, and so I took some photos a couple of years ago. I dug those back up and I shared those. But we're sharing more about Dragon Ball itself. In fact, as we're recording this, I'm curious to see, this is like about a week before I'm releasing this episode. I think I know what the next one is going to be this coming Friday, because the topic came up in Discord in our Patreon chat, and I said, hey, that's a really cool idea. Let's see if I can get that together. If not, I have a couple backups, and then maybe that one will be coming in the future. Is it video game related? Then it was the one. Is it not video game related? Maybe it's a different video game one. I don't know. You're in the future. You know everything. How is it? Do we have flying cars yet? Other than that, I guess like the big news right now is the Sparking Zero, the Neo DLC is out. I think you're going to have to listen to your friends over at We Got a Podcast for commentary on that game. It's not my jam. So I guess let's leave it there. You got the main website, kanzenshuu.com. We've got the website, we've got the podcast. You already listened to the podcast. This is the podcast. We've got the forum, we've got the wiki. I think, is that everything that we have? Website, forum, wiki, podcast. Those are all the things that make up Kanzenshuu. What else can we share? www.grabyournearest.com, which somehow is about a year old. Aka, twitch.tv/VegettoEX. We will see you there most Saturday nights for regular streaming. Have we moved on fully from Mario Kart over to Sonic Racing Cross Worlds? Who could say? Very likely that's going to be the main one going forward. Come hang out and chat with us. It is your bonus podcast content most weeks. I would be remiss not to mention patreon.com/Kanzenshuu. If you like what you hear, like what you read, just help us keep the lights on every month. That's all we're going to say. We don't make a big deal out of it. We don't push it. There's no crazy, like, for this level, you get this thing over here, and then you're going to get all these bonuses over here. It's nice and simple. It's just, hey, this is a cool thing I want to support. There is that crazy $100 level, though. If you want to subscribe to that, I'll send you a magazine and a personal note every month. I just got rid of a bunch of extra magazines from our charity fundraiser that we did a couple months ago. So that felt nice. I still have too many magazines. So if you're crazy, if somehow in the year of our Dende 2026, you have too much expendable income, consider signing up for that level. I'll send you some old V-Jump, Psycho Jump, and other stuff, and I'll send you a note and say, here's Crocodile. He's cool. Probably something I forgot to mention. That's okay. Kanzenshuu.com. We'll see you next time. I have been Mike, the Cheeto EX. Thank you to Vincent for coming on the show, chatting about the book. We will see you next time. Bye, everybody.